Counselor Campbell.
Here.
Counselor Siomo. Counselor Edwards. Counselor Asabi George. Counselor Flaherty. Counselor Flynn.
If anything,
Counselor Garrison. Counselor Janey. Counselor McCarthy. Counselor O'Malley.
Present.
Counselor Wu. And Counselor Zakam. Madam President, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'd like all guests, colleagues, and staff to please rise as our lovely clerk brings us through an invocation today. And I would ask that everyone remain standing as she leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. She should be going somewhere. Good afternoon. O thou who made us one nation out of many people, amidst our diversities of race, tradition, and faith, unite us in a common love of freedom. Revive us in a spirit of devotion to the common good, so that we may open doors to the neglected and oppressed. Cleanse the heart of our nation from that greed which preys upon others. Endow our leaders with wisdom that they may stand among nations as an example of benevolence and exalted justice. Help them to make this land a common workshop of its people, where all may find their place and work, keen to do their best. Hear these words of the Athenian Pericles. I would have you, day by day, fix your eyes upon the greatness of your country until you become filled with love for her. And when you are impressed by the spectacle of her glory, reflect that it has been acquired by men and women who knew their duty and had the courage to do it. And these words of the Hebrew psalmist, let the people give praise, O God of all nations. Thank you.
At this time, Councillor Baker will join us to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, if you could amend the attendance record to reflect that Councillor Baker is present. And at this time, Councillor Baker has a special presentation.
Gentlemen? Well, the boys are coming down. I just got back from a trip to go look at job training over in Ireland. We went to Limerick. Oh, Tim, come on up. Sorry, Tim. Well, you're leaving, so. So I want to introduce some people from Donegal. When we went to Donegal, the Donegal City Council is directly involved in job training with their people. They have actual brick and mortar sites that are controlled by the Donegal City Council where we're training plumbers, carpenters, electricians, welders, caterers, just fabulous, fabulous programs. And what we were shown over there was the warmth of the Irish. We were welcomed like we were brothers. I guess we have something going on over here. But I just wanted to make sure that we brought these gentlemen over here so we could recognize the good work that they're doing over there, but also the partnerships that we have with Boston. We think we have some complicated political stuff. They're dealing with Brexit. Donegal is actually a county that's part of the Republic of Ireland, surrounded by Northern Ireland. So if you can picture it, there's places in Donegal it would be like driving over to Charlestown, and when the borders were in place, you would have to leave the Republic of Ireland, one checkpoint. At the other side of the bridge, there'd be an English checkpoint. So when Brexit happened, when the European Union happened, those borders all disappeared. So part of Brexit, and I think the Lord Mayor may speak about it briefly, part of this Brexit is we're concerned that there may be hard borders again. We all have the discussion around borders. So without that, I want to introduce the boys. You know Tim. We have Seamus O'Donnell, Lord Mayor. We have Martin Harley, Deputy Mayor, and we have Gary Martin, who is Economic Development for Donegal. With that, I'm going to bring the Lord Mayor up and let him say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Council members, ladies and gentlemen who are gathered here today, it's a great honour for me as the Mayor of Donegal back in Ireland to get the opportunity to address you here today. And we appreciate very much the effort that you are making to give us a very hospitable and warm welcome in what is a very important week for all of Ireland. We know the Boston Breakfast is coming up, and we know the parades and the standstill that this city will come to recognise the exploits and the brilliance that has been achieved by not only Irish, but the people of Boston and the diaspora that have come into Boston over the last number of years. We had last week two of your members, namely Tim and Frank, over in Donegal last week, and we showed them what we're about. We are a county in Ireland, in the northwest of Ireland, that are going to be massively affected by Brexit. And for those of you who may only summarily know Brexit, it in effect is going to bring Britain out of the European Union. Most of our land border is with counties that are in Britain. We have 3 or 4 kilometres of land border with the Republic of Ireland, and whilst we are members of the Republic of Ireland and will remain in the EU, there will be a hard border, it looks like, between our county and Derry, we work so closely with. And we have been in this city in joint trade missions ourselves in Donegal and Derry City and Strabane District Council on joint trade missions. And what we're saying to you is that we are a resilient people in Donegal, we are a resilient people in the north of Ireland, but we do need all of the help and assistance that we can bring about. And if companies, be it from the United States or be it anywhere else in the world, want a base in Britain and want a base in the European Union, we straddle the border on 2 sides. We work very closely with our counterparts in Derry City, and there is a unique opportunity that we can work and create a base in Britain and a base in the European Union for you. Frank has outlined the magnitude of the movement of people, and within Donegal County Council, for example, there are hundreds of people who work for us as a council but who live in Derry. And the real effects of a hard border may come to pass that there could be a customs point, there could be checkpoints in the morning and in the evening coming in. So the free movement of people, and they are all the one people in that region, will be detrimental to the movement of and the normalisation of working there. We are, as Frank has said, very much open for business, and we are a resilient, tactful, experienced people in Donegal and in the northwest of Ireland. We had the guys over last week looking at some of our education sectors, how we train people to go straight into the workforce. We have companies from all over the world located in Donegal, and we ensure whether they need an apprenticeship, whether they need a high-skilled degree, whether they need a master's degree, that we can tailor, fit and suit through our courses the workforce that is needed and the demands that the companies that are based with us have. And we're very willing and open and receptive to sharing our experiences with the City of Boston and with the United States of America, so that if you can learn from us, we are more than welcome to that, because we have learned an awful lot from your good selves here this morning. We have an event coming up in Donegal. It's called Donegal Connect, and it's between the 27th of September and the 6th of October, and it is about inviting our diaspora back to our county in the northwest of Ireland for a celebration by way of a thanksgiving for how well the people who have left our shores in more difficult times have done for themselves. And equally, we want to give people an opportunity, whether it's your kids, whether it is yourselves who want to locate, be educated, work, start business, set up business, invest, expand, that the opportunities exist there. And we equally are going to try to get a trade mission over from yourselves, maybe the Mayor's office, so that we can share with you guys the experiences that we have had because of what we have learned over the last number of years. So I won't hold you back from your important work. I'm delighted to be here, delighted to see green ties and Donegal emblems and people that were so hospitable to us this morning. I am joined here this morning by my Deputy Mayor, Deputy Martin Harley, and our Chief of Staff in the Economic Development sector and the diaspora, Gary Martin. So on behalf of the three of us, we thank you most sincerely for your hospitality, and we look forward to forging stronger relationships and working closely with yourselves, because we do see Boston as a gateway city for our people who want to set themselves up in the United States of America, and we will do the selling for you. And if you want to do a bit of selling for us, we'll be very receptive to that as well. Thank you very much.
We're going to take a picture here. Can people come up and take a picture, please? And do we want to, yeah, what are these? Okay, oh, city flags. So why don't you do that?
Certainly.
We, on behalf of Frank Baker, myself, and the Boston City Council, we do have 3 small gifts for you to take back. They're the City of Boston flags, and hopefully you fly them proudly over in Donegal at some point in time. They're the big boys, so you better have a big flagpole.
We certainly will.
Am I blocking out?
You're kind of big standing in front there. Burly, beefy. Thank you so much. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome. We may see you tomorrow. I was going to say flag raising at 11 and 7.
And then maybe a print out. You guys are going back to Frank's office.
Thank you, you guys.
Thank you for having us today.
I'm not sure if the morning will go. Yeah, can't. Yeah, see.
Carla, good to see you.
Tim, we'll catch you later on.
And enjoy all the great work that John Napoleon did breakfast.
Thank you, Councillor Baker, and thank you to Councillor McCarthy. And moving on to the approval of the minutes. If there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last council meeting will stand approved. Seeing and hearing no objections, the minutes of the last council meeting are so approved. Moving on to communications from His Honor the Mayor.
Would you like to read 0501, 0502?
That'd be great, thank you.
Docket 0501, message in order for the supplemental appropriation for library department. FY19 in the amount of $732,604 to cover the FY19 cost items contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Boston Public Library Professional Staff Association, known as PSA. The terms of the contract are October 1st, 2016 through September 30th, 2017, and October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2020. The major provisions of the contract include base wage increases of 2% effective the first pay period of January of each fiscal year, and a new step starting in 2019, filed in the Office of the City Clerk on March 11th, 2019. Docket number 0502, message in order to reduce the FY19 appropriation for the reserve for collective bargaining by $732,604 to provide funding for the library department for the FY19 increases contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Boston Public Library Professional Staff Association.
Docket 0501 through 0502 will be assigned to the Committee on Ways and Means.
Docket number 0503, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $280,000 in the form of a grant for the Safe and Successful Youth Initiative amendment by FY18 and FY19, awarded by the Massachusetts Executive Office of Health and Human Services, to be administered by the Boston Police Department. The grant will fund a comprehensive interagency strategy that connects law enforcement, employment, education, public health, and youth development agencies to reduce youth violence in the Commonwealth.
Docket 0503 will be assigned to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice.
Madam President, would you like me to read docket 0504 through 0508?
Thank you, that'd be great.
Thanks. Docket number 0504, message and order for the confirmation of the reappointment of Michael DeMella as a member of the Zoning Commission for a term ending November 1st, 2020. Docket number 0505, message and order for the confirmation of the reappointment of Michael Nichols as a member of the Zoning Commission for a term ending October 1st, 2021. Docket number 0506, message and order for the confirmation of the reappointment of Anasi Foro as a member of the Zoning Commission for a term ending May 1st, 2021. Docket number 0507, message in order for the confirmation of the reappointment of Jill Hatton as a member of the Zoning Commission for a term ending May 1st, 2021. And docket number 0508, message in order for the confirmation of the reappointment of Joanne Keith as a member of the Zoning Commission for a term ending October 1st, 2021.
Dockets 0504 through 0508 will be assigned to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Moving on to reports of public officers and others.
Madam Clerk, I'll read docket 0509 through 0514.
That'd be great, thank you.
Thank you. Docket number 0509, notice is received from the mayor of his absence from the city from 6 a.m. on Monday, March 11th, 2019, until 2 p.m. on Monday, March 11th, 2019. Docket number 0510, notice is received from the mayor of the appointment of Jordana Missani as a member of the Archives and Records Advisory Commission for a term expiring January 3rd, 2022. Docket number 0511, notice was received from the city clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the ordinances of 1979 regarding actions taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the city council at its meeting of January 30th, 2019. Docket number 0512, notice was received from the city clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the ordinances of 1979 regarding action taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the city council at its February 13th, 2019 meeting. On docket number 0513, notice was received from the city clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the ordinances of 1979 regarding action taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the city council at its meeting of February 27, 2019. And docket number 0514, notice was received from the city clerk in accordance with Chapter 6, of the ordinances of 1979 regarding actions taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the city council at its meeting of March 6, 2019.
Dockets 0509 through 0514 will be placed on file. Reports of committees.
Docket number 0139, the Committee on Government Operations, to which was referred on January 9th, 2019, docket number 0139, an ordinance regarding good food purchasing standards in the city of Boston, submits a report recommending the order ought to pass in a new draft.
Councilor Flaherty, you have the
Good
floor.
morning, Madam President. At this time, I would like to withdraw docket 0139 due to the fact that our colleague and the lead sponsor is unavailable due to jury duty. So I'm asking that this remaining committee, and at the appropriate time when the jury service and civic service is complete, we'll bring it forward to the council for a vote. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. So at this time, docket 0139 will remain in committee, and we'll take action on it in the future. Thank you. Moving on to matters recently heard for possible action.
Hit you on the ass.
Thank you. Moving on to matters recently heard for possible action.
Okay.
Thank you.
Docket number 0176, message in order for the confirmation of the reappointment of Dr. Maichia Minter-Jordan as a member of the Boston Public Health Commission's Board of Health for a term expiring January 15th, 2020. Would you like me to read the second one also?
Yes,
If you'd like?
thank you, Madam Clerk.
Docket number 0305, message in order for confirmation of the appointment of Philomena Labista Baptista as a member of the Boston Public Health Commission for a term expiring January 15th, 2022.
Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise today to discuss docket 0176 and 0305. Yesterday, the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities held a hearing. I want to thank my dear colleague and friend, the District Councilor from South Boston, for his partnership and some great questions. We combined the two dockets because they are two appointments. One is a reappointment, the other is a new appointment to the Boston Public Health Commission Board. These are two exceptional candidates, one to continue to serve, Dr. Maisha Minter-Jordan, a West Roxbury resident and the Executive Director of the Dimmock Community Health Center. She is being appointed for her second full term. She was one of the individuals on the board that led on some of the anti-tobacco initiatives, as well as issues such as food epidemics, food deserts, and H1N1. The other appointment is a new addition to the board, hopefully. Her name is Philly Baptiste. She's a Bowdoin, Geneva native, grew up in the city, now serves as the Executive Director of the Bowdoin Street Health Center, which serves 11,000 patients. The Dimmock Community Center serves about 18,000 patients. These are among the best regarded community health centers in Boston. We spent a lot of time at the hearing discussing the purpose of the board and other ways that we can both impanel the board to continue to do good work as it relates to health disparities, reference some work that the good counselor from District 7 and I are teaming up on as it relates to black mortality rate, giving birth, as well as food deserts, smoking cessation programs, the opioid epidemic, the list goes on and on. It's important to note that there is zero stipend that's associated with these board seats. These are individuals, public health professionals who do this because they want to give back to the city that we are lucky enough to call home. They would both be exceptional additions to the board. I'm particularly appreciative of their efforts to make sure that our Public Health Commission serves everyone, regardless of where they came from, what they look like, who they love, how they identify. It's really important, I think, to have a forward-thinking, progressive health commission, and these two individuals are certainly in line with that mission. So I look forward to the I'm recommending the passage of these dockets and the confirmation of these two appointments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. And I'm assuming you want to actually suspend the rule. Actually, no. Did you hold a hearing on this one?
I'm sorry, we had a hearing, Madam President. I'm recommending passage of these dockets and confirmation of the appointment.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, for the opportunity. I want to say thank you to Councilor O'Malley for a robust hearing. It was very informative, and I'd like to let our colleagues know that the two people that are being nominated are exceptional leaders in public health in our city. They've done a tremendous amount of work bringing people together, but providing exceptional health care to people that desperately need it, including our immigrant community, people living in public housing, low-income families. So I want to echo what my colleague, Councilor O'Malley, said about the exceptional background of both of these dedicated professionals that will soon join the board. Thank you, Madam President.
No, thank you, Councilor Flynn. At this time, Councilor O'Malley, who's chair of the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of dockets 0176 and 0305. I will take them separately. For docket 0176, all those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0176 has been passed. And for docket 0305, all those in favor of passage say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0305 has been passed.
Docket 0143, order for hearing to discuss possibilities of creating a traffic enforcement unit within BPD and exploring the pros and cons of installing traffic enforcement cameras.
Chair recognizes Councilor McCarthy. Oh, sorry, dude. That's why you're on your way out.
That's right. There's the guys like you. All right. Docket number 0143. We had a hearing yesterday. It was a great hearing. This hearing was sponsored by City Council President Andrea Campbell. Representing the Boston Police Department was Deputy Superintendent Kevin McGoldrick. Representing the city was Commissioner Gina Fiandaca from Boston Transportation. We had representatives from Walk Boston, the ACLU, Boston Cyclists Union as well. Clearly, from the data that we saw, Boston needs to work on its safe streets. Whether you're walking, you're biking, you're driving, or possibly riding a scooter later on, we need to get ahead of this, and that was very clear from the hearing that we held yesterday. Exploring of traffic cameras was a major discussion of the over 2-hour long hearing last night. Its positives and its negatives were discussed. At this time, we'll be leaving this discussion in committee. But before I sit down, if I could, through the chair, hand it over to the sponsor, President Campbell.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy, and thank you to my colleagues who also participated in the hearing, but also for your advocacy separately around the budget and other ordinances and legislation to make sure that we realize the goals of Vision Zero and Boston 2030. You know, as district councilors in particular, this is a constituent issue in case we field all the time. Speeding cars, people getting hit by cars. It's not safe to walk down the street, to cycle. And sometimes some of these calls involve someone being killed in our district. So the hearing really addressed the need to move faster and quicker with responding to these issues, and to do so in a sort of comprehensive way. Yes, I applaud the efforts of Councilor Baker and this council with respect to lowering the speed limits, and now Councilor Flynn picking that back up to lower it even further. But that is futile if we don't have enforcement going with it. If we don't have structural changes to our streets, speed humps, if we don't invest more in slow streets. Right now, there are some communities that were selected for slow streets, and there are resources in slow streets, but it's going to take maybe a year or two or longer for them to actually see the benefits of slow streets. That's frankly too long. And what we heard yesterday in public testimony was so powerful, even though there weren't a ton of folks that testified, but there was one woman who was a physician an ER physician at BMC, who herself had been struck while riding her bike and was just sort of harassed by a car when she was trying to get to work. And she said, we have more urgency or more of a sense of urgency with responding to leaves in the gutter or street cleaning than we do with people dying, walking and cycling in our communities. So we have tremendous work to do to get folks to see the importance of responding to this issue, to treating this as a public safety issue. Just like someone getting shot and stabbed, people also dying from other means, and this is one of those means. And so there's a lot more that we can do, and the hearing was an opportunity to think about how we expand the capacity of BPD to do enforcement, how we augment existing departments to do this work, how we actually can fund a traffic analyst to make sure we have good data, which currently isn't the case, which we can do through our next budget cycle. So look forward to continuing the conversation on that. And with respect to the automated cameras, there were folks who testified in favor of that. This really involves State House legislation that has been put forward. And I say, even though it's in the State House, if it affects the residents in the city of Boston, we should be having conversations on it too. So I thought it was a real robust conversation. Thank you, Councilor McCarthy, again, for designing it and shaping it and for scheduling it so quickly. And look forward to continuing the conversation with all of you with respect to these pressing issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. And docket 0143 will remain in the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice.
Thank you. Moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions.
Docket number 0515, Councilor Zachem offered the following order for hearing to discuss freestanding signs on public walkways.
Councilor Zachem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This is not quite a refile, but it is a continuing discussion that had been in Councilor Flaherty's committee under a pilot ordinance program for what are commonly known as sandwich board signs on our city sidewalks. This has been an ongoing issue for certain neighborhoods and even just certain streets around access for folks who have physical impairments, people with strollers, pedestrians, as we're talking about scooters. Moving forward, clutter on some of our sidewalks is important. For anyone who's been down Newberry Street anytime recently, there are a lot of crowds, which is good. It's good for business. There are also a lot of sandwich board signs on a narrow sidewalk. that makes it sometimes impassable, particularly in the winter when we have snow and ice on the ground. I have enough trouble navigating that area. I can only imagine someone who is in a wheelchair, using a walker, having a stroller, etc. So I think it's really important that we talk to ISD and code enforcement and other relevant agencies to how to address this. There's certainly areas in my district, and I know in areas across the city where sandwich boards are not an impediment, where sidewalks are wide enough, where the crowds are not as thick, that they make a lot of sense. Even Boylston Street in Back Bay makes sense for that. But on Newberry Street, we continue to have complaints from residents,
God bless you.
even from business owners, some of whom don't want them but feel if their competitors are using the signs, they have to put them out there. So I look forward to having this discussion and finding out something that's enforceable, that makes sense, that preserves this city's commitment to accessibility, and make sure we're doing right by the people in the city of Boston. So I do want to thank Councilor Flaherty for his previous work on this. I want to thank Councilor O'Malley for his contributions to this discussion. Thank you. God bless you. And really, I look forward to having this hearing and trying to figure something out, whether it's policy, whether it's legislative, we can do it administratively. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Zakem. It's always good to have laughter and love in the air. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and please add my name to this. This initially started out as a citywide, in response to a citywide problem in our local business districts with the sidewalk signs and sandwich boards, et cetera. So I know that we've been working on it. I know that the pilot program has sort of produced some positive dividends across the city, with the exception, I know that in District 8 it continues to be a problem, as outlined on Newbury Street, Boylston Street, and even some of the surrounding streets, because of its it's such a condensed commercial district, with a lot of those buildings having multiple businesses in that same footprint, and obviously the race to kind of get advertisement and to get customers, navigating the streets over there, particularly in the foul weather, or those that have limitations or disabilities. It's difficult. So this may be this District 8 may warrant sort of a carve out, if you will, to the pilot program. That's something clearly we should talk about in the hearing, but look forward to an expedited hearing to try to bring some relief to District 8 as it pertains to this, but also the caveat on that, it seems to be, at least the pilot program seems to be working in other districts. I'll defer to my district colleagues, but your Broadways, your Dorchester Avenues, your Center Streets, your Main Streets, all seem to be working in conjunction with this ordinance, and it seems to be providing some dividends for folks over there. That said, District 8 seems to be sort of a different beast, if you will, so worth a discussion. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Flaherty. Anyone else looking? Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Garrison, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy. Let's go back to the docket number. Docket 0515 will be assigned to the Committee on Government Operations.
Docket number 0516, Councilor Garrison and Asabi George offer the following order for a hearing on veterans' post-traumatic stress disorder known as PTSD and improving awareness of and access to mental health care services for veterans.
President.
Councilor Garrison, you have the floor. Go ahead. I want to make sure your mic was on.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm happy to have Councilor Isabi George co-sponsor this order with me calling for a hearing on veterans' post-traumatic stress, PTSD, and improving awareness of and access to mental health care services for our veterans. It should come as no surprise that the experience of war can negatively impact the mental health and well-being of those who have been in combat situations. Studies have shown that PTSD impacts up to 20% of veterans of Operation Iraq Freedom, Enduring Freedom, the Gulf War, and the Vietnam veterans. In addition to war PTSD, according to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, 55% out of 100 women and 38% out of 100 men have experienced sexual harassment or sexual assault at some point when service in the military, which can often result in prolonged and recurring traumatic stress over time. Risk factors for PTSD among people in the military include a compromised socioeconomic status, previous trauma, drug and alcohol abuse, a poor social system, homeless, a family history of mental illness and a lack of accountability, local veterans support service. Those with PTSD and have co-occurrence disorder or conditions such as major or minor depression, which puts them at a risk of suicide. In 2008, the United States Department of Veterans Affairs reported that suicide rates increased for both veterans and non-veterans, highlighted the reality of the suicide is a public health concern that affects people everywhere. The average number of veterans who died each day by suicide in 2018 remained unchanged at 20%, and the suicide rate increased faster among veterans who had not availed themselves of VA healthcare benefits versus those who had. This is an urgent need for our city, and we can better serve them, caring not just for their physical well-being, but also for their mental health as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrison. Councillor Edwards, you have the floor.
Just very brief, I wanted to thank you so much for your leadership, Councillor Garrison, in this, and as well as my colleague who's not here, Councillor Asabi George. I just wanted to note that this is an incredibly important conversation, and noting, as we've seen with Mission 22, or over 20 veterans are commit suicide on a daily basis. So I think it's incumbent for us as a city to make sure that we are providing the appropriate resources, making sure we're meeting them where they are, and making sure that we're filling in any gaps for mental health issues, removing all stigma to ensure that those who have served our country feel that they can come back to the city that they call home and be completely received, wholly taken care of, and absolutely respected. So thank you so much for your leadership in this and having that conversation. I look forward to coming up with as many ways as possible to make sure that our veterans, when they come back, or any person who's ever served, feels dignified in Boston.
And add your name, Councillor
Yes,
Edwards.
please.
Madam Clerk, if you could add Councillor Edwards, Councillor Baker, Councillor Siomo, Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Janey, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Zachem, as well as the Chair. Docket 0516 will be assigned to the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery.
Docket number 0517, Councilors Flynn and Flaherty offer the following order for hearing to discuss services for persons with disabilities.
Councillor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, may I suspend Rule 12 and add Councillor Edwards as a sponsor?
Any objection? Madam Clerk, if we could add Councillor Edwards as the third original co-sponsor. Thank you, Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, according to the Boston Language and Communication Access, over 13% of Boston residents have at least one disability. And I know the City of Boston Commission on Disabilities is doing exceptional work across our neighborhoods in helping those in the disability community access vital city services. Under Commissioner Krista McCosh, she's providing exceptional leadership on so many issues impacting the disability community. They meet regularly here in this chamber, and they talk about ways that they can improve services for those with disabilities across the city. The Language Communication Access Program is an opportunity in a program that ensures that anyone that does communicate with various city departments is able to speak to someone also in a language, in their own language other than English. So during this budget process season, I also want to make sure that we have a robust discussion on ways that we can make sure that those in the disability community, their voices are heard, and that if we have to advocate more effectively for those in the disability community, that's something that I want to focus on, Madam President. And finally, the Americans with Disabilities Act, it provides, as we all know, a federal legislation that provides equal access to those in the disability community. It's probably one of the best federal legislation passed in 50 years. And we want to make sure that all city services and everywhere in Boston is ADA compliant. And that's a top priority for Mayor Walsh, who's done great work on that, for Commissioner McCosh, but also myself, that's also active in the disability community here in the city. So I do want to thank the my colleagues for their work on disability access for many years, and looking forward to a conversation about this. This is a refile, but looking forward to a conversation hopefully over the next 30 to 60 days. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to thank the lead sponsor for his great work and also for recognizing my efforts in the space over the years. I know that this coming July, we'll be celebrating the 29th anniversaries of the American with Disabilities Act and all the work that has been done locally, statewide, and nationally to ensure that disabled persons have access to the same services as every other American. It's also important to know that our city will be, the city's age will be rapidly increasing. According to the 2014 Aging in Boston report, there'll be an approximate 52% increase in the older population in Boston by 2030. That's pretty significant. And so with more of our residents choosing to age in place in our neighborhoods, there'll be an even greater need for accessibility improvements to meet the needs of our elderly neighbors, and even a greater demand on the in-home health care. I know that on this body, Councilor Zakem and I had led efforts with respect to providing home health care workers with permits so that they could park in resident parking areas without suffering from ticketing and towing of transportation officials while they're taking care of our residents as well as those with hospice that are dying. So those are things that I'm going to continue to fight for, and we'll continue to work through the sponsorship of Councilor Flynn and our other colleagues. So thank you, Madam President. Look forward
Thank
to an
you,
expedited
Councillor
hearing.
Flaherty. Councillor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you for adding me as an original co-sponsor. This is an incredibly important conversation for many of us, and I just want to echo some of the comments that my colleagues have said, but also add to the fact that if we design a community, our city, for those with disabilities, then all of us will have access. So coming from the perspective of someone in a wheelchair or has mobility issues, if we can design and think of our transportation infrastructure, we can think of how we move in and out of our buildings from that perspective, then every single one of us will have access to the building. On top of that, I want to make sure that part of this conversation that we include parents of adult children with disabilities. In many cases, the parents with children with disabilities are involved in the education space, and we're talking with BPS. But some of those kids have aged out and are still in need of services, and for this community to also recognize and to support those parents who will be putting in a lot of work for the rest of their lives to ensure that their adult children are respected and have the dignity. I want to point out the incredible work of Special Townies in Charlestown that is dedicated to making sure that those kids have a voice, no matter what age they are. I want to point out to the Latino parents who are here and received a certificate. These are Latino parents in support of their kids with special needs. There is a movement, but we also need to make sure it doesn't stay within the education space. This is part of the disability conversation to support these parents. I want to also bring up our own great dear friend and servant here, Rocco, who recently lost his parents, his last parent, his father. And the grievance, I don't know that we did have any sort of grievance services for adult children with special needs who also lose their parents. There is a gap that we are not meeting and we're not filling, and this conversation needs to include them. And so I just wanted to make sure that I am beyond excited about this, but if we do not include those parents or those adult children with disabilities, taking them again away from the education space, then we're going to miss out again on an important voice and perspective.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councillor Baker, Councillor Siomo, Councillor Garrison, Councillor Janey, Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Zakem, Councillor McCarthy, as well as the Chair. Docket 0517 will be assigned to the Committee on City, Neighborhood Services, and Veterans and Military Affairs.
Docket number 0518, Councillor Zakem offered the following order for hearing regarding enforcement of the Boston Trust Act.
Councillor Zakem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. In 2014, my first term on the City Council, I was very proud to introduce the Boston Trust Act, which at the time was the most progressive legislation in the country regarding law enforcement's cooperation with immigration and customs enforcement. I was incredibly proud when this body, all 13 members, supported that legislation. Mayor Walsh signed it. At the time, Commissioner Evans issued orders implementing it, ensuring that the Boston Police Department One disregards detainer requests from ICE unless they're accompanied by criminal warrants, as our Constitution requires, both federal and state Constitution. And sending a message to people in our immigrant communities, regardless of their immigration status, that they can call the police, interact with the police, if they are a victim of a crime, witnesses of crime, without fear of any immigration repercussions. And that was in 2014. It was a different time. It was a different administration in Washington. And I think, one, we need to always be looking at ways to get better and improve. But the real impetus for this hearing order was incidents that were recently reported on WBUR and the Boston Globe and other news outlets around the city of really troubling claims about Boston police working with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, working with a private business owner who was seeking to retaliate against an employee for filing a workers' compensation claim. And we need to, one, examine that in particular incident to make sure that our city's policies and laws are being followed. You know, when the Trump administration, Labor Department, brings charges that you're cooperating too much with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that's pretty unusual and something that troubles me greatly and something that I don't think anyone in the city of Boston wants to be doing. So we need to look and make sure that the Trust Act is being complied with on a daily basis, but we also have to look at now 5 years later, does it need to be enhanced? Does it need to be changed? I think our police department in general has done an outstanding job, both Commissioner Evans and now Commissioner Gross, in implementing in general the letter of the law of the Trust Act, but can we do better? Can we do more here in the city of Boston to make sure that everyone really does feel safe? Because it makes us all safer. You know, we have our great delegation in Washington, at least from Massachusetts, that is working very hard to fix this problem at the federal level. And that's really where it has to be fixed. But cities and towns and states have a responsibility in the meantime to do the best we can, to work with the hundreds of thousands of people in Massachusetts who may not be properly documented through immigration status, but who are here in our city, who are working here, who are riding the trains and buses with us, who are going to school with our children, and who have every right to be free of persecution, to call the police when they're the victim or witness of a crime. And this particular incident, I don't want to dwell on it too much because this really is a larger conversation, but the claims that were outlined in news reports are incredibly disturbing, and the City Council has a responsibility, an oversight responsibility of every agency in the city of Boston. So we're going to examine that. I look forward to having this hearing and hearing from certainly the Boston Police Department, the Walsh administration, our corporation council advocates, and others around the city and around the Commonwealth on this important issue, and seeing what we can do to do better, because we always can. Boston has been a leader on this. We will continue to be a leader on this. And if that requires changes in legislation, this is the body to do it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Zakem. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank Councilor Zakem for your leadership in 2014 and your leadership today. The fact of the matter is the Trust Act is one of, I think, the shining moments of this city's history, basically saying that at the end of the day, if you live here, if you work here, you are part of our family, you are part of our community, and that at the end of the day, if you are not going to do right by our city, if you're going to commit crimes, if you're going to do something else, then rightfully so, our police officers should find you, should arrest you, and should put you through the appropriate process, due process that we have. But they are not supposed to double as both police officers and agents of the immigration. And I firmly believe in that separation. I think that at the end of the day, it does not serve us well to commingle those things. So this hearing, I think I'm very excited about to hear about how Boston has abided by the ordinance that it passed and how Boston can do better. I do want to address what I've read about in the newspaper about the ICE task force that exists in BPD and how that is or is not consistent with the Trust Act ordinance that we passed. I do want to know more about how the trust component of the Trust Act is directly related to transparency and data, and how we can see, as a city councilor, still need to see a lot of that data to assure that we are abiding by the spirit and letter of that law. So this conversation couldn't be more timely. I think it's great to have it on a regular basis, and I think it's, you know, we don't want to be knee-jerking to every single issue where we hear about an immigration flare-up, but we do need to make sure that when we pass an ordinance with unanimous consent and with the mayor's signature, it means something, because it meant something to me. It meant something to our immigrant constituents. It meant something to a lot of people in terms of a sigh of relief and believing that their immigration status is not going to be a barrier to justice. In fact, in Boston, your immigration status is irrelevant to how you get access to justice. And I want that to maintain, I want to continue that reputation, and I want to maintain that course. Thank you.
Add your name, Councilor Edwards.
Yes, please.
Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And just through the chair to the maker, and it's only because the person's name is listed in the fifth whereas, and pardon my ignorance, but do we know what Jose Martin Paz Flores was, what the underlying charges were, and or whether or not he had already been previously deported? Do we know the answers to those questions through the chair?
No,
to
but
the
I'm
maker?
sure that we can find those out after the fact, but, or explore that further in the hearing. Councilor Zakhem can, I think, talk to you about that. But right now, I think we can proceed with still assigning it to a committee. Right, Councilor Flaherty? Okay, all right, thank you. Would you like to add your name? Okay. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Edwards, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Garrison, Councilor Janey, Councilor O'Malley, as well as the chair. Let's see, docket 0518 will be assigned to the Committee on Civil Rights.
Docket number 0519, Councilor Garrison offered the following resolution: that the renovation of the historic Alexandra Hotel follow the zoning code as to the height of the building, and that this historical site be preserved and protected under the guidelines of the South End/Roxbury Landmark District.
Councilor Garrison, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I have filed this resolution in relation to the historic Alexandra Hotel, that the City Council advises the BPDA that the zoning code, which was carefully crafted with years of public input, be respected to the height of the building. I also propose that it be resolved that the Alexandra renovation be assumed under the guidelines and governance of the bylaws that direct South End Roxbury Landmark District. I have heard from countless residents, both in person and on the phone, about their many concerns with the proposal of this historic site. The main concerns, which I outlined in my former resolution, have to do with parking, shadows, structure integrity, and appearance. At the very least, there need to be a substantive lesson of the height, requiring potential background parking and projection, of the impact of the shadows on resident windows and roofs, for the hours being between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. in all 4 seasons, which must be a requirement of any addition to the hotel. Additionally, the use of predominantly glass towers cannot be considered a complement to the Victorian housing environment, but rather be a contrasting and distraction focal point. I and many others have seriously concerns about the Alexandra Hotel process being pushed by developers of the BPDA without real community input and in violation of the zoning laws and the South End Roxbury Landmark District guideline. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Garrison. Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I rise as the District City Councilor who represents Roxbury and South End, and this hotel is in my district. And as such, I've been engaged in the Article 80 process for many months. My staff and I have attended multiple meetings and worked very closely with residents, with neighborhood groups, with the development team, with the Boston Planning and Development Agency to make sure that residents both in Roxbury and South End are fully engaged in discussions about this project. I have received just to date close to 100 emails from South End and Roxbury residents, and the vast majority of those are in support of the project. Now, for decades, the site of the Hotel Alexandra has been an eyesore and a blighted piece of property. This is at the corner of Washington Street and Mass Ave. For many years, it's been a missed opportunity to bridge the gap between the South End and Roxbury. There have been several proposals over the years, but none have come to fruition, to the great frustration of many of those who live in close proximity to the site. While many residents are not thrilled about additional height, Most understand that it's a necessary trade-off to build this hotel. I'm pleased that by my urging, the development team has listened to community members in formulating a robust community benefits package valued at over $250,000. It includes commitments to hiring Boston residents, people of color, and women. In addition, the development team has entered into an agreement with Unite Here Local 26, which was not an easy feat, and they are committed to local hiring and a diverse workforce. I'm also glad that they have proposed to contribute to the public realm improvements, again, at the request of direct neighbors who live near the site. And I should point out here that while this is on the corner of Washington and Mass Ave, they are looking to do more than just that particular corner, but all four corners. This is a major intersection, and it also abuts your district, Councilor Baker, and so two of those corners are your corners that we'll see some improvements with. Two of them are mine. And they've also committed to restoring the historic facade, which is very important to everyone who has come. They want to see this building preserved and restored. While some view this as primarily a South End issue, I want to make it perfectly clear that this hotel is in Roxbury on the Roxbury South End border, and I have worked very hard to make sure that Roxbury residents as well as South End residents were listened to every step of the way. I've nominated Roxbury residents to the IAG. I've asked the developer to make sure that they utilize local vendors and promote Dudley Square and not just Washington Gateway for local shopping and dining options, and I've worked with them to include jobs for Roxbury residents and educational opportunities for Madison Park Technical Vocational High School. And in terms of this body, it is not our job to preempt the role. There are many opportunities to stay engaged, and I encourage all of us to stay engaged, particularly residents who live near this site and who care about this, to stay engaged in the process through the BPDA board, through South End Landmarks Commission, and through the Zoning Board of Appeals. I believe that we should allow people to continue to weigh in at those venues, and I object to the suspension of the rules and ask that this matter not be adopted.
Thank you, Councilor Janey, and I don't think there was a request for suspension of the rules and adoption, but since there's an objection, we will, that is noted. Thank you. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in opposition of this resolution as it seeks to delay or halt a project that has had a very robust community process. I believe we should allow for the process to proceed through the proper channels, through the BDPA and onto the ZBA, and then on to the Landmarks Commission. So 3 different bites at this apple. As many of you know, South End and Roxbury residents, as well as those driving down Mass Ave in Washington, have looked at this blighted property for over 30 years. After speaking with many of my constituents, and a majority finally feel confident in the current developer's intention to retain and restore the existing historic and beautiful facade of the Hotel Alexandria and turn it back to the gem it once was. I believe in order for this 150-room, 13-story hotel with ground floor and rooftop retail space to come to fruition is in the form of some zoning relief. Just to put it into perspective, to be able to restore this historic facade, and they're going to do all four sides of the building. We're not doing just the front facade, sides, back. It will cost approximately $6 to $7 million to just restore that facade. That's before we get into anything vertical. So you have to grant the zoning relief to be able to get what I think the surrounding community wants, is that facade returned. The previous developer wanted to restore the facade, wanted to do over 20 stories. So to put it into perspective, now there'll be 8 or 9 less stories here, 13 stories, which, you know, that takes a little bit for people to swallow, but it's a trade-off to improve that gateway, and not to mention, we have to mention the good work that Councilor Janey has done. As District City Council, it's incumbent on us to insert ourselves into these projects and make sure that our communities are taken care of around these projects. Councilor Janey has done that, so that's why I stand in opposition to this resolution. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And although I don't represent this area of the South End, it is an important issue for all of the South End. I probably represent an area just about a quarter mile outside of that hotel. But I can say over the last 15 months and during the campaign that this was often a topic of conversation in debates. And when we got sworn in last year, this was always discussed at neighborhood meetings, and Councilor Janey was always there answering difficult questions, providing excellent leadership on an issue that is important to the Roxbury community, to the South End community. And so although I didn't really get involved in this issue that much, I did watch from afar Councilor Janey and Councilor Baker on their leadership, helping shepherd this process to make sure everyone's voice was heard during this difficult development process. So I just wanted to echo what Councilor Baker said is, you know, I saw the leadership skills of Councilor Janey and Councilor Baker up front, and I have heard from constituents as well in the South End, and I will not be signing on or supporting this. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Just a point of clarification for the public, at the council meeting, we don't take public testimony, but I will assign this to a committee where folks from the public can come if they would like. So at this time, docket 0519 will be assigned to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Moving on to the next docket. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket number 0520.
Actually, before we even read that docket, if we could amend the attendance record to reflect that Councilor Wu was actually here. Thank you.
Docket number, where am I? 0520. Councilors Wu and Janey offer the following order for hearing regarding eliminating the ridership fare on MBTA Bus Route 28.
Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and apologies for my in and out. I'm on lunch break from jury duty, so I was glad the timing worked out. Otherwise, would have been happy to just let my amazing co-sponsor and colleague speak on this. Just a quick context setting, the MBTA did vote this past Monday to move forward with fare hikes with some small amendments that were thanks to the advocacy of members of the council and the public and the mayor and so many other elected officials saying that now is a time when public transportation is really expensive for people as it is. And so this is a hearing order that is a next step, as now we're past the fare hikes, to acknowledge that we're actually at a very important decision-making point for the MBTA when it comes to fare policy. The T, over the next 2 years, will be implementing their what's called AFC 2.0 program. It's a technology platform that will move to cashless fare collection on buses and allow for more data collection on other points of entry. It gives a lot of flexibility, so the T could offer discounted fares to certain groups, to certain individuals, or eliminate fares altogether for certain bus lines or on certain days of the week or days of the year. As they're implementing this, they're investing, it's extremely expensive. They plan to install stations to load up your Charlie card along certain routes because you will not be able to pay cash on board. And the metrics suggest that it's okay if there's a quarter-mile walk or a half-mile walk to a loading station for most frequently used bus stops. There are extreme equity issues when it comes to that cashless transition, and we know that communities where people depend on cash will not be well served by just a station every quarter mile or half mile away to load up your card, because they will need to be oftentimes loading more frequently than not. Folks are not carrying large amounts of cash with them where they can just do one deposit and then ride for the week. And there are also major civil rights issues when it comes to the enforcement piece. The T is planning to use a proof of payment system, which means that they won't check as you get on, but there will be random checks with potentially MBTA police officers or others coming onto the bus asking passengers at random to show that they have proof of payment and they'll just do these checks and then give a heavy penalty, a fee or fine, if you don't have that proof when they ask you for it. There's been a lot of questions about who will do that enforcement. Will it be civilians? Will it be those in uniform? As we're being mindful of concerns around community trust and relationships, and even the potential for a perception of profiling. So, given that there are major financial barriers for residents, given that there's major need to improve bus service particularly, given that there will be civil rights issues and equity impacts, what Councillor Janey and I are putting forth today, and ask for your support, is for a conversation to talk about one step that would address all of those issues. The 28 bus line is the most heavily used bus line on an average weekday basis. More than 12,000 riders on the average weekday. 45% do not have a driver's license, 54% don't own a car, 65% are low-income residents, and 92% are people of color. This bus route is an extremely important economic opportunity corridor for the city, running from Mattapan Square to Ruggles Station, where residents could walk right to a job in Longwood Medical Area, which is adding thousands of jobs every year. So if we are moving forward with the speeding up of buses along Blue Hill Ave that Council President and others have been working with the city on and the MBTA, this would be a measure that would also ensure that people have no barriers to access that economic opportunity corridor. This is the route that I think we need to have the conversation about. Secretary Pollack and I spoke years ago about the potential for there to be pilots on certain bus lines when the new technology rolled out. She was open to that when we spoke about it. And this is the way to keep that momentum going for folks who say it is not fair that fares are going up, and it is not right that public transportation, which benefits everyone, is so hard to access. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Wu. Councillor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam President, and many thanks to Councillor Wu for her partnership and her leadership on these very important issues. I will keep my remarks very brief because she hit on so many important points and all of the data points. The 28 bus route is such an important route, as Councillor Wu has already indicated. Certainly one of the busiest that we have in our city. It connects Mattapan to Grove Hall, to Dudley Square, and then to Ruggles. It is the bus route for me. I'm a frequent rider of the 28. I took the 28 this morning to get here at City Council this morning. This is very much an equity issue and an economic justice issue for the people that we serve. We know that communities of color, poor communities spend much longer time in terms of their commutes, getting to and from work or to school, to doctor's appointments, et cetera. And we need to do all that we can to ease that burden. A cashless fare would be a step in the right direction, and certainly in terms of moving this bus more quickly. But we certainly have to follow and make sure that it is implemented with the right intention around equity, and that we are not adding a further burden for the people that we are trying to help with this. I encourage all of you to participate in this hearing. I expect it will be amazing, and look forward to having that conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Janey. Councillor Edwards, you have the floor.
Very briefly, I want to thank both of the makers of this incredible ordinance, but I also wanted to add to the conversation, because I think it is a matter of moving cashless is an equity issue, and assuring folks, you usually have to have a bank account, usually have to have access to regularly being able to pull your money out physically to get it, and we've already seen a dearth in banks in certain communities. We find that there's a lot of issues with check cash places in certain places, so getting access to cash, there's communities that have to pay more to even get the cash that they have. So I think that that's important to note also. I mean, in as much as that train has already left and they're going to go to a cashless place, and I think we as a city of Boston need to have a conversation about where we can provide for those machines to allow for folks to load up. So I would encourage City Hall to be one of those locations, every single library to be a location, all of our BCYF facilities to be a location where people can load up their cards, looking at public schools, places where all of us frequent anyway, and as much as they're a public service entity, that they have a place where people can load up their cards to help compensate for the equity issue. And I agree with Councillor Wu, this whole quarter-mile assumption that people have access as long as you put it within a quarter mile on the bus route, I don't think that's realistic. I think we can step up as a city, and I'd love to work with all the different places and properties that we have where the loading stations can be added.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Would you like to add your name?
Yes, please.
Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Edwards' name, Councilor Baker, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Zachem, as well as the chair. I'll just add on the, and first of all, thank you, Councilor Wu, thank you, Councilor Janey, and I'll just add on the accessibility piece. There was a letter in the council meeting agenda probably a month ago, specifically looking at Charlie Card accessibility. It was a letter I sent to the mayor to say not only should we do it at City Hall and other public spaces, we should think about also extending it to businesses. So Councilor Edwards wanted to flag that. I want to thank the mayor for the partnership. We have been in communication about City Hall in particular, but also expanding that. And so I will make sure that everyone in the council is kept abreast with respect to their specific districts because it is really important. So thank you, and thank you again, Councilor Wu. Docket 0520 will be assigned to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. At this time, I'm just going to move on to the green sheets to pull something out of order that we have to take a vote on, that we actually need the participation of Councilor Wu, who has to eventually get back to jury duty. Any objections to taking a docket on the green sheets out of order? Madam Clerk, if you could read that docket into the green sheet.
Docket 0107.
Thank you, Councilor Wu.
This is on the assigned for further action, page 2 of the green sheets. Message in order for your approval to authorize the sale of certain portion of public way known as Gold Street, as shown on the plan entitled City of Boston Public Works Department Engineering Division, Discontinuance Plan, Gold Street, South Boston, dated November 9th, 2018, specifically containing 6,261 square feet, the discontinued parcel. And this is docket number 0107, which received its first reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you. This received a unanimous first reading 2 weeks ago, and we are required to take two votes 2 weeks apart. And as a refresher, this is in Councilor Flynn's district, and it would be giving the receiving compensation to give an unused, too narrow way as to be expanding the public access points for 2 abutting properties, which the council approved 2 weeks ago.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. At this time, we'll take a second vote on docket 0107. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll.
Thank you, Madam President. Councilor Baker?
Yes.
Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Campbell?
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Siomo? Yes. Councilor Siomo, yes. Councilor Edwards? Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Asabi George? Councilor Flaherty? Yes. Councilor Flaherty, yes. Councilor Flynn? Yes. Councilor Flynn, yes. Councilor Garrison? Yes. Councilor Garrison, yes. Councilor Janey? Yes. Councilor Janey, yes. Councilor McCarthy? Councilor O'Malley?
Yes.
Councilor O'Malley, yes. Councilor Wu?
Yes.
Councilor Wu, yes. And Councilor Zachem?
Yes.
Councilor Zachem, yes. Madam President, docket number 0107 has received its second reading and got 11 votes in the affirmative and 2 abstentions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 0107 has been passed. Now going back to motions, orders, and resolutions, Madam Clerk, if you could read docket 0521. Thank you.
You're welcome. Docket number 0521, Councilors Flynn and Flaherty offer the following order for hearing to discuss city services and public facilities in the South Boston waterfront.
Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, may I request to suspend Rule 12 and add Councilor Wu as a sponsor?
Any objections to suspending Rule 12 and adding Councilor Wu? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Wu as a third original co-sponsor of docket 0520. Thank you, Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, the South Boston waterfront is a rapidly growing area of the city. Projections for 2030 could be that the population might be at 30,000 or 25,000. Currently, it doesn't have a police station. It doesn't have a fire station. City Councilor Nick Collins, that represents the area called for a public library, which I support, and also the residents of that neighborhood would love to see a community center there, and eventually some type of location where there could be a polling location as well. Because of the growing population, we are concerned that there is no firehouse down in the area, although there is several firehouses in and around the downtown area, including South Boston, including High Street as well. But as we all know, if there is traffic on a Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock and there's an emergency with the growing traffic in the neighborhood, it would be very difficult for a fire truck to get there in a timely manner. We had conversations in the past, myself and Councilor Flaherty, with the Boston Police and with the Boston Fire Department as well. So we're asking for a hearing because we want to make sure that the residents of the South Boston waterfront have access to basic city services just like every other neighborhood: police, fire, library, community service, community center. And that's something we want to focus on. And as we approach the budget process, we want to work closely with the mayor's office to see what we possibly can do to make the South Boston waterfront, to make sure that city services are down there. I'm glad to partner with Councilor Flaherty, who has worked on this issue for many years, and with Councilor Wu, who has also worked on this issue for many years as well. And I had the opportunity when I was young to work in the South Boston waterfront when there's only 2 or 3 buildings down there. I was a popover boy for Anthony's Pier 4, and there was virtually no traffic down there. And now it's very difficult to get in and out of there. So it is a public safety concern for me. And looking forward to the hearing and looking forward to working closely with my colleagues as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Through the chair, does he have the recipe for those popovers by any chance? 'Cause, they were fabulous. But I concur with the sponsor's comments. According to Go Boston 2030, the South Boston waterfront population will nearly triple to 20,000 residents, with approximately 13,000 new jobs coming into the neighborhood alone. So despite that growth, as mentioned, there's no school, there's no library, there's no community center, there's no fire station, no police station, no EMS station. They got no ball fields if kids want to play baseball or basketball, and there's not even a polling location. So much more work to be done. But as we're having those conversations with new businesses looking to locate there, with new development, as well as new restaurants, we should also be having the discussion about basic city services and their impact on the residents down on the South Boston waterfront's quality of life. So it's the #1 issue that I know Ed and I hear when we're down there meeting with residents. So look forward to an expedited hearing, and let's have a discussion with some of the major stakeholders down there and maybe see if they can create a partnership with our city to identify some locations down and around the South Boston waterfront where we can have sort of these basic city services and amenities that will make the world a difference. So look forward to the hearing. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the 2 sponsors who have been willing to partner and added my name. I'll just echo that every neighborhood deserves not just services and access to those services, but just gathering spaces for people to create community, and particularly for a neighborhood, sub-neighborhood that has been right at the epicenter of extremely rapid development, and where residents have often felt that their desire to keep the kind of improvement of the residential services and amenities going at the same pace that commercial development has been going, that hasn't matched, that there's been a lot faster growth of the big glass towers and less so their concerns that have been iterated over and over again, that they need access to a library and schools and everything else that a neighborhood should have. As the development process has been going, it's been frustrating for them to not even have spaces to gather, to organize, to amplify their voices, to then have that feedback into the development process. And so there are many reasons and many kind of ripple effects about what happens when there isn't community space. And finally, I'll just note that the push on this council, either to split precincts or to re-precinct the city overall, there's one big challenge with the Seaport, South Boston waterfront area, which is that there is no place that the polling location could go except maybe District Hall. And even that is a quasi-public-private partnership where the lease was about to expire and now has been pushed back, but there's not even a place where residents who need to vote could necessarily go to do that right away. I know now Senator Collins has proposed a lot of other ideas, like a little library or information center, and so we just need that physical space and the conversation about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Point of clarification, Nick Collins is a senator. I worked pretty hard to get him there, so. But he's also, this hearing order is long overdue in the nicest way possible, Eddie, you know, right? Senator Collins has been banging this drum for a while, and this hearing is long overdue for us to support his efforts and also just his ideas. We should at least be looking at it like we say. Everybody should have parks, should have libraries, should have public realm space for themselves, and it's about time we're talking about this. Thank you, and I do love a nice pop over Eddie too. So,
Add your name, Councilor Baker.
yes.
Okay. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and again, thank you so much for your leadership, Councilors Flynn and Flaherty, on this conversation. And I'll say outright, Eastie's going to be looking at you, because we're expecting a massive population growth, and the standards that you'll set from this hearing, I do hope that you will consider setting standards for either for every certain amount of 1,000 people, there should be a ball field or children, or there should be some sort of safety mechanism, or there should be an ambulance. You know, we had to fight so hard for the extra ambulance we got in East Boston, and that shouldn't have been a fight. Our population showed we needed it, Massport was sharing it with us. And so I think what I hope this conversation not only deals with with the waterfront in your district, but also making sure that as communities grow, and all of our communities are going to grow, certain standards come out of that to make sure that no matter how, with the certain ordinance or whatever we pass, we will always be assured that with population growth, we will be providing the infrastructure to go with it. I can also point out Charlestown, looking at the one at the Bunker Hill development, and that's going to triple in size as well. And how do we make sure every community gets their fair share? Because the worst thing is that we'll be responding or reacting after the fact and be fighting for an ambulance years after the fact that we needed one. And we almost lost a child because we didn't have appropriate ambulance resources in East Boston. So thank you again for your leadership. I will be there, and I hope we can get some standards for the growth of Boston.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Garrison, Councilor Janey, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Zakem, as well as the chair. Docket 0521 will be assigned to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Moving on to personnel orders.
Docket number 0522. Council Campbell for Council Flaherty.
Oh, just a minute. Do you have? Go ahead, Madam Clerk. Perfect.
Docket number 0522. Council Campbell for Council Flaherty.
Councilor Flaherty seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0522. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0522 has been passed.
Docket number 0523. Council Campbell for Council Garrison.
Councilor Garrison seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0523. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0523 has been passed. Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam President. Just move for reconsideration if there's no objection to docket 0518. I'd like to have my name added to 0518.
Any objection? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Flaherty as well as Councilor Wu to docket 0518.
And a point of clarification through the chair for our colleagues, just did a little research. So the gentleman that was mentioned in the fifth whereas, apparently,
Councilor Flaherty.
I think it's important to know because there are others that may have not have signed on to it, and they may sign on if they found out the reason why this incident happened.
Okay.
So this gentleman was working for a construction
But I would say this. I don't want to go any further because we want to try to get through the meeting, obviously. But if others want to sign on and have questions, they can talk through sort of language to Councilor Zakem. But at this point, just want to move for reconsideration, add your name, add Councilor Wu, and then move on to the rest of the dockets, mindful of a lunch date scheduled with one of our colleagues. Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. And thank you, Councilor Wu. Moving on to late files. At this point, I am informed by the clerk that there are three late files, actually three late files, which in the absence of objection will be added to today's agenda. Hearing and seeing no objections, the three late file matters are added. Madam Clerk, if you could read the first into the record.
From the Office of Councilor, Boston City Councilor Michelle Wu, dear Madam Clerk, I'm writing to inform you that I am unable to attend a full City Council meeting today because I have been selected to serve on a jury. I will do my best to attend part of the meeting if the court schedule allows. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Michelle Wu, Boston City Councilor at Large.
The first late file matter will be placed on file.
In the office...
And just a point of clarification, all three of these are notifications from colleagues who were either late or absent, and the third is a personnel order. That's why you don't see them. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome. From the Office of Boston City Councilor at Large, Anissa Asabi George, March 12, 2019. Dear Madam Clerk, President Campbell, and colleagues, please be advised that I will be absent from the City Council meeting on February 13, 2019. I am currently in Tunisia participating in a peer exchange program through the Arab American Institute. Despite my absence, I would like to offer my support for docket number 0139, an ordinance regarding good food purchasing standards in the City of Boston. Since best, Anissa Asabi George, Councilor at Large.
The second late file matter will be placed on file.
And the third late file matter in the City Council, March 11, 2019, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Garrison.
The third late file matter will be placed on file. Oh, I apologize. It will not be placed on file.
Great minds think
I
alike.
think this person would like to be paid. So the third late file matter, which is a personnel order to Councilor Garrison's office, my apologies. The third late file matter, all those in favor of passage of the third late file matter say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The third late file matter has been passed.
Great.
Apologies, Councilor Garrison. Anyone looking to remove additional matters from the green sheets may do so at this time. Moving right along. Moving on to the consent agenda, and I am informed by the clerk. That there are no late files for the consent agenda. So the chair moves for adoption of the consent agenda at this time. All those in favor of adoption, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda is adopted. Announcements? Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask for unanimous consent to make a brief statement.
Any objections? You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to remind all colleagues and assembled guests and those watching that tomorrow we will be hosting the flag raising for Ireland. Around 11 o'clock, we'll begin with a wonderful program in the Piemonte Room. We've got great food. We've got Irish step dancers. We've got bagpipes. We've got a choir. The Consul General from Ireland will be joining us. We have Sean Kine, who is a member of Parliament, who's also a minister for the Irish government, will be here as well. The flag raising itself should be around 12:30, 12:45. So please join us. Extend it to your staff. It should be a great event as we kick off the high holiday weekend. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you. I would like to move for unanimous consent to make a brief
Any
statement.
objections? Councilor Edwards.
I'm here today actually with some very sad news. I wanted to recognize the passing of a giant in East Boston. Mary Ellen Welch left us last week. She was a fourth-generation East Bostonian. Her family reaches all the way back to when East Boston was Irish, before it became Italian, before now today it is a Latino community, majority. When I heard about the news last week, I have never deeply cried so much for someone's loss in my district because she knew me before I knew me. She was a supporter of an assumption that I could do something in politics before I even knew I could. Mary Ellen Welch is, for those who don't know her, I think the closest comparison would be she is East Boston's Melnia Cass. That's how powerful she is. She's the reason why we have a greenway. She's the reason why the airport respects our neighborhood. She is the reason why so many folks know that East Boston has a vibrant, active community. Air Inc. going against the airport to this day is because of her. NOAA is because of her. So many things come from her. And as Phil Giffey had said, she was one of the Maverick Street mothers, and we're losing them on a regular basis. The great oaks are falling. And it's a frightening moment for a lot of us because her leadership and her activism has been such a guiding light for us. We always knew we'd be okay because Mary Ellen Welch is there. Who's in the fight? Mary Ellen Welch. Who is willing to literally physically put her body on the highway to stop the expansion of the airport with other mothers? Mary Ellen Welch. She's that kind of inspiration, and that's the kind of activism we have inherited. She also was not only being a member of the Maverick Street Mothers, she was also campaign manager for Mel King when he was running. She was progressive before progressive was cool. She took the hits, and she took them proudly because it was the right thing to do. There's no way to really ever describe the loss that we have and feel as a community. And in typical Mary Ellen Welch style, she doesn't want a great memorial. She wants us to keep moving. She wants us to keep going and keep fighting. It is through her and that inspiration that I keep moving forward and never apologize for ever standing up for this neighborhood. Mary Ellen Welch is a giant. She will be greatly missed, but I truly believe every time East Boston or Boston inhales a challenge and exhales social justice, she is with us. So I am here today, and thank you all to my colleagues for signing this memorial. This will be given to her family to make sure that they understand that we know who has transitioned. And I just wanted to make sure that this body didn't go by without acknowledging her presence and her loss.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just quickly, I wanted to invite everyone to our lunch today. We're going to talk about TIMBO, trauma-informed mind-body techniques. This organization is in Pine Street, Women's Inn, MCI Framingham, Taunton State Hospital, the Women's Recovery Program, Recovery High Schools, their partnerships with the Boys and Girls Club, and they're also touring the Trauma Spa this afternoon with the doctor from BMC that's going to implement the program. So hopefully everybody can come, and please invite your chief of staff or anybody else that's interested in this. Everything that we do, the root of societal issues, you can trace back to trauma. Until we start dealing with that down on the base, then we're going to continue with these problems that we have. So please come. Please let people know that may be interested if they want to come and listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. And just one quick note, today is Kerry, our lovely Kerry Jordan from Central Staff, his birthday, so happy birthday to Kerry. We can't do this work without him. And just a point before I move on to memorials, obviously we had some residents show up today to voice their concern and to protest. And we were all for protest. And I just wanted to say we appreciate your passion. We appreciate the way in which you did the protest today. Just for a point of clarification, there had been actually a colleague in communication with some of the folks related to this issue previous to the protest that took place a few weeks ago, and who had actually committed to doing a hearing. And so I think the one previous, was about individuals versus the issue. Today, I think, was about the issue. So I just wanted to flag that. Everyone here, I think, is passionate, not I think, I know is passionate about the work, passionate about people having a space and a platform to share whatever is on their hearts with respect to this city. Each of us is working in different ways to close inequities and gaps, to make sure that those in communities of color or some of our poorest communities in the city of Boston have a voice, that their stories are shared, that they have a platform. And so I just wanted to applaud my colleagues in particular for the work you do every single day that often doesn't get the recognition it probably deserves. To also applaud today the protest and say thank you for how you showed up in the chamber today. And at some point look forward to seeing that passion show up for some of the other issues we're working on, whether it's around diversity in law enforcement, equity in business, our veterans, mental health, homelessness, making sure that every student in the city of Boston has a quality education. The list is long of the issues this council works on, and the fights that we fight aren't often public. They're sometimes behind the scenes on behalf of our constituency. So I just wanted to thank my colleagues, thank the staff as well, thank the teams and the interns, those who are overworked and underpaid. We often say that. Thank you to you guys, and thank you for always coming back to City Hall to do this difficult work. It's not always easy, so thank you. And at this time, I'd like all guests, staff, and colleagues to please rise as we adjourn today's meeting in memory of the following individuals. For Councillor Janey, Ola Fields. For Councillor Flynn and Flaherty, Jody Luongo. For Councillor Siomo, Edna McGuinness, Ellen Lee McCarthy, Grace Breslin, and for all councillors, Mary Ellen Welsh. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. The chair moves that when the council adjourns today, it does so in memory of those aforementioned individuals. We are scheduled to meet again in this chamber on Wednesday, March 20th at 12 noon. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The council is adjourned.